Tonight on Reporting Scotland, calls for calm as British and French scallop dredgers clash in the English Channel. Hampden or Murrayfield, the decision on where Scotland will play goes into extra time as the SFA say they need more information. A report criticises Police Scotland for failing to trace an elderly man who made a 999 call a day before he was found dead in his home.
It's just screaming out here that we need to learn from this and find out why it went wrong, what was happening, because obviously it's a huge communication error.
Also coming up on the programme. Inmates will be given vaping kits as Scotland's prisons prepare to go smoke-free. And Lyon target Moussa Dembele doesn't train with the Celtic squad as they prepare for tomorrow's Europa League playoff. Good evening. There's an appeal for calm and fresh negotiations after UK and French boats clashed in the English Channel over fishing rights. Scottish boats were involved in the skirmishes off the coast of Normandy yesterday morning. Talks between fishing industry leaders from both sides of the Channel are planned in Paris tomorrow in a bid to ease the growing tension. Rachel Bell reports.
Dramatic scenes in the English Channel. This Peterhead registered dredger was one of 5 UK boats involved in the skirmish over scallops. They were surrounded by up to 40 French vessels. Rocks and smoke bombs were thrown towards the boats. Some were damaged in the clash. This is a scallop-rich area. French law prevents boats fishing for scallops until the 1st of October. UK boats aren't bound by the same restrictions.
If we leave them alone, they will ravage the area. We have quotas and fixed hours. They don't have quotas, and round the clock they fill their boat.
Back in port in the south of England today, a battered Honeybourne 3. The Scottish Government says the Scottish vessels concerned are permitted to fish for scallops in the area. The UK Environment Secretary says the events of yesterday were unacceptable.
Well, my heart goes out to the fishermen who've been caught up in this because they have my full sympathy. They're fishing legally and they have every right to be fishing in those waters. And we are talking to the French authorities at the moment in order to make sure that there can be no repeat of the scenes that we saw.
In previous years, larger UK boats agreed to stay out of this zone in exchange for more fishing rights. This year, that agreement wasn't reached.
We remove about 6% of the catches each year. The French, 90-odd%. So if there's any accusations about overfishing or whatever, it shouldn't be directed at us. But what I would say is that we need to de-escalate tensions.
Go! The Scottish Fishermen's Federation is calling for calm. It says now is the time for rational discussion and peaceful resolution, not conflict at sea.
And Rachel joins us from Peterhead. Tell us what happens now, Rachel.
Well, the Scottish Whitefish Producers Association has asked for a meeting with their French counterparts. They want to get back round the table. They want to try and resolve this dispute. That meeting is expected to take place in Paris tomorrow. Now, there's no doubt that the British fleet were legally entitled to be there, but today moral questions have been asked as to whether they should have been there. An international environmental group has condemned the British fleet for damaging scallop spawning grounds. Client Earth says it's disappointed to see fishing boats catching scallops during the spawning season. They have praised the French. They say they've demonstrated high environmental standards by banning their fleets from fishing in the Bay of Seine during the summer. Now, just by way of background to that Peterhead registered scallop dredger, the Honeybourne 3, well, there's no suggestion that the Honeybourne did anything wrong yesterday. In the past 2 years, its master and owners have been fined for 2 separate incidents of illegal fishing for scallops.
Rachel, thank you very much for that. Rachel Bell in Peterhead. The Scottish FA has delayed a decision on whether or not to switch the home of Scottish football from Hampden to Murrayfield. The board met today but say more time is needed. Well, our senior football reporter Chris McLaughlin is outside the National Stadium. Chris, does this come as anything of a surprise?
Not really, Sally, to be honest. It is something of an anticlimax, I suppose. This was billed as D-Day for Hampden Park. In the end, it's D for delay after hours, in fact days, of negotiations between board members of the SFA. A very short two-line statement from the Chief Executive, Ian Maxwell. He says the decision will have a significant bearing on the game in Scotland. We have asked both parties for additional information to be submitted within 7 days to allow a final decision to be made. Now, how did we get here in the first place? Well, we know the SFA leased this place from the owners, Queen's Park. That lease is up in 2020. The SFA say because of refurbishments needed, they just simply can't afford to continue on the current terms. Now, two options going forward. One, buy the stadium from Queen's Park, come up with some kind of business plan going forward and keep the home of Scottish football here in Glasgow. The second is here at Murrayfield, at the home of Scottish Rugby, have put forward a proposal of their own. It would mean Scottish football up sticks and moving along the M8 50 miles. The SRU are very keen for that to happen. It's a massive call for the SFA. That will now happen in 7 days' time.
So what can we read into this delay, if anything?
Well, it's difficult to say. I suppose one of the things we could possibly read into the delay is that there's no clear favourite. But what we will have this evening, Sally, is a number of fan supporters in Scotland saying, why can't the SFA just make a decision? Make a decision after months and months of deliberations. But make no mistake, this is a huge a huge crossroads for Scottish football, and a decision that the SFA quite simply cannot afford to get wrong.
Chris, thank you very much for that. Police have been criticised for failing to be diligent enough in their efforts to trace an elderly man who'd made a 999 call for help a day before he was found dead in his home. Albert Inch lived in sheltered housing in Inverness, but officers went to the wrong flat. Jackie O'Brien reports.
72-year-old Albert Inch had called 999 for help, but no one came. 19 hours later, he was found dead in this sheltered housing complex in Inverness. It emerged that 2 officers were sent to the McEwen Court address after both the BT operator and police control room couldn't make out what he said. But they went to the wrong flat.
It's just screaming out here that we need to learn from this and find out why it went wrong, what was happening, because obviously it's a huge communication error and this man was needing help. And what happened? Why did it happen? And we mustn't let that happen again.
An inquiry by the Police Investigations and Review Commissioner found that the officers spent just 8 minutes at the premises and didn't make enough effort to find Albert Inch.
The police watchdog has described the case as tragic and says officers must be reminded of the need for extra diligence when investigating 999 calls which end unexpectedly, particularly when dealing with the elderly.
Highland police officers were issued with new guidance soon after the incident. But in a statement, the pensioners' families say they feel disappointed and let down that there'll be no fatal accident inquiry or further action taken because police procedures have been changed. The turmoil is now with us, they say, for the rest of our lives, while the police see this as a matter that is complete.
We can never tell, had the police officers actually been able to discover Mr Inch, whether the ambulance service could have saved his life. We don't know the answer to that question. What we do know is we need to get better in the future.
Mistakes will happen, but when mistakes actually involve loss of somebody's life, it is clearly not acceptable, and so therefore we must never see a repeat of this.
In a bid to ensure that, the police watchdog is also recommending that in such cases, officers should not leave an incident until they're satisfied the individual seeking help is traced. Jackie O'Brien reporting Scotland, Inverness.
A man has been charged following a suspicious fire at a Sikh temple in Edinburgh. No one was injured in the incident in the site in Leith, which happened in the early hours of Tuesday morning. The 49-year-old is due to appear at Edinburgh Sheriff Court tomorrow. He'll also appear in relation to a second fire at a Methodist church in Leith, which happened on the same night. Taxpayers may have to pay millions of pounds extra for 2 new CalMac ferries after complications in the vessel's design and delays in obtaining official approval, according to the owner of the shipyard where they're being built. Jim McCall, who owns Ferguson Marine in Port Glasgow, told the BBC he was frustrated by the tendering process, but says the ships, the first of their kind, will be finished as soon as possible. The Scottish Government said the delay was disappointing. Staff at a top hotel have described how they thought a terrorist attack was underway when 3 masked men ran into the building to carry out an armed robbery. They were giving evidence at the trial of Richard Fleming, who denies any involvement in the incident, in which watches worth more than £500,000 were taken from a boutique at Gleneagles Hotel. Joanne Macaulay reports from the High Court in Edinburgh.
Former Gleneagles concierge Louis Hutchison said he was at his desk on the morning of the 27th of June when 3 masked men dressed in black ran into the hallway. He said he was alerted to them by a loud bang on the desk.
Mr. Hutchison said one of the men pointed a gun at him and said, "Move and you're deed." He said 2 of the men then headed in the direction of the Mappin and Webb jewellery store, while a 3rd man used a hammer to hit a showcase window which contained watches. Daniel Horn, who works in Mappin and Webb, said he was alerted to something happening when he heard a loud bang, and he thought at first it was a terrorist attack. But when he realised what was going on, he and a colleague hid in the office in the shop until it was all over. He told the court that he later learned that the whole thing had lasted only 2 minutes, but that it felt like ages.
The court also heard from Agnes Whetton, who had just arrived at Gleneagles with friends for afternoon tea and a tour when 2 masked men rushed past her. She said they left the scene quickly because she didn't know what was going on, but she didn't want to be there. Richard Fleming denies all the charges and the trial continues. Joanne Macaulay reporting Scotland at the High Court in Edinburgh.
Prisoners who smoke are to be given vaping kits from the 1st of November as Scottish jails prepare to go smoke-free. It'll cost £200,000, but the Scottish Prison Service said it will be part of a programme to encourage and support inmates into giving up tobacco. Our Home Affairs correspondent Rival Alderson has more.
Popping out for a drag. We can't smoke in public places or offices anymore, so we have to go outside. But that's not an option for those serving time behind bars. At the moment, they're able to smoke in their cells, but on November the 30th, Scotland's jails become smoke-free, a move which could cause problems. 3 years ago, a riot in a high-security jail in Australia was sparked after inmates were banned from smoking there. The Scottish Prison Service is now offering all smokers a vaping kit free to help them quit tobacco. From November the 1st, all prisoners in Scottish jails who are smokers are going to be offered one of these vaping devices. They'll also be given 3 tanks to go into it, which is about 2 or 3 days of vaping, and they'll be given a charger which they can charge the device up in their cell. Smoking rates in Scotland have been falling and now stand at around 20% for the general population. But among prisoners, the rate's about 80%, while it's believed a massive 95% of women prisoners smoke. Vaping will be the only alternative.
After the 30th of November, there will be nowhere in our prisons where anyone will be able to smoke. People in the community who are giving up cigarettes still have the opportunity to smoke in parts of the community. The people in our care won't be able to smoke at all. We're recognising the unique nature of that environment by providing the support that we are. The move's part of the government's aim to make Scotland smoke-free by 2035, but the £200,000 price tag has raised opposition eyebrows.
I think the Scottish Prison Service has clearly given this some thought. I think it is a concern. This is a cost to the public purse at the end of the day, but they have time limited it. And I think that has to be the right thing to do, to say, look, we will help you transition off smoking, but after that, the public simply shouldn't be shelling out to help you transition away.
Vaping kits will be given away for just 2 months, and they'll be sold at a discount until April, when prisoners will have to pay the same price as everyone else. Rival Alderson reporting Scotland, Shotts Prison.
You're watching BBC Reporting Scotland. It's approaching 16 minutes to 7. A reminder of tonight's top story. Calls for calm as British and French scallop dredgers clash in the English Channel. And still to come, Lyon target Moussa Dembele doesn't train with the Celtic squad as they prepare for tomorrow's Europa League playoff. They say they feel Scottish, they have Glaswegian accents. They've lived in the city for the past 7 years after their parents fled Pakistan because of their Christian faith. But today, teenagers Somer Umid Bakhsh and his brother Arib found themselves on the doorstep of the Home Office. Joined by friends and supporters, they handed in a petition with 85,000 signatures to try to prevent the family's deportation. Suzanne Allen reports.
This is Arib at his happiest, with friends at youth group. And this is Somer. Scotland is all these brothers have ever known. They don't remember Pakistan. But the threat of deportation hangs over them.
I would be terrified because the culture is alien to me. The language is alien to me. It's like another planet, Pakistan.
I feel really upset because I'll basically spent most of my life here, and then you're just leaving and without knowing anyone there and not having any friends.
I like playing football, I like playing cricket, I play guitar, play saxophone, just like any other teenager.
Here are the signatures printed out, and we would hope that this would be presented to the Home Office.
Today, the Church of Scotland and supporters of the family handed in a petition to the Home Office. The Bakhshs say they'll be killed if they go back to Pakistan because of their faith.
Christians in Pakistani society are not always enthusiastically embraced, and Maksud, dad of this family, knows that he's on a hit list because of his Christian faith.
The brothers are sporty and bright. Somer got 6 A's and 1 B in his National 5 exams. School friends from Springburn Academy have started another petition.
They're really hard workers, they don't give up, and in the National 5s they've done really well, so they didn't let this fear hold them back in any way.
Have a bit of compassion really and support the boys and let them stay. They're Glasgow boys, they've got Glasgow accents, they're not from, they feel as though they're from Glasgow, so let them stay.
The Home Office gave us this statement.
The UK has a proud history of granting asylum to those who need our protection, and every case is assessed on its individual merits.
The church, schoolmates and friends hope this petition might change their mind. Suzanne Allen, reporting Scotland, Glasgow.
For many young adults, visiting a nightclub is a regular social activity. But for some people with disabilities, it can be a much more challenging experience. So a Glasgow club has started running nights aimed at promoting inclusivity. We asked Chloe Taylor to take us with her.
I felt quite nervous at the start, and then when I arrived into the room I was like, wow, this is great. This is absolutely fab and I enjoy it. I go up dancing and it's a great experience. My name's Chloe Taylor. I'm 22 and I have Fragile X syndrome. With Fragile X, you end up really stressed out and you don't know what you're thinking in your head. And Fragile X is a bit hard sometimes. It's my first opportunity to get into a nightclub, and now that I'm 22, I've got more opportunities.
Our feedback we hear is they don't feel comfortable, they don't feel welcome, they don't feel allowed to go in the club normally without having to explain who they are, what disability they have, sometimes stop because they're maybe staggered up. That's due to their disability, not the fact that they're drunk.
Live is good because they're not coming along and just listening to music, they're coming along and seeing people. They're coming along and seeing people my age up doing it, so I try and inspire them to try and sing or do what they want to do.
I like it when it's all busy and people go in and they enjoy themselves, and I like seeing all my pals going in too. I like seeing all their faces and smiling at me.
The Celtic striker Moussa Dembele is a target for the French side Lyon. The 22-year-old didn't train with the squad this morning ahead of tomorrow night's Europa League qualifier against Sedova. Meanwhile, Rangers are making the long trip to Russia, where they defend a 1-0 lead from last week's first leg. Brian McLaughlin has more.
Striker Moussa Dembele scoring against Rangers last season, and his form is now attracting interest from his home country.
Moussa and his representatives was at the club today, speaking with the club. So, yeah, the speculation around him, of course. I think it's safe to say, listen, there's a big interest from another club, and the football club, and obviously Moussa and his representatives are speaking about it.
After a 1-1 draw last week against Sudava in Lithuania, Rodgers watched his Celtic side get back to winning ways at the weekend.
Even though our performance wasn't great last week, we still got an away goal in European football, which is important, and now we can come and finish the job in the second leg. So that's our plan.
Rangers face a round trip of over 4,500 miles to face the little-known Russian side Ufa. And after leaking 3 goals at the weekend, one former Rangers striker says the defence will have to be on full alert if they're to progress in the competition.
I think they've got to recover defensively. I think maybe their shape, not being used to it, caught them out a wee bit. But the 3 goals they lost were poor. So as a back 4 or 3, I think they'll go a 4 tomorrow night. I think as a back 4, they'll have to defend better to make sure they get through.
Success for both teams tomorrow would guarantee European football at least until Christmas. Failure and a long, hard domestic season is what lies ahead. Brian McLaughlin, reporting Scotland.
Andy Murray is due on court at the US Open shortly as he continues his long journey back from injury. He plays Fernando Verdasco in the second round at Flushing Meadow. Caroline Itzan has the story from New York.
There are 2 main challenges for Andy Murray as he tries to book a place in the third round here. The first is the extremely challenging conditions. Yesterday, for the first time in the history of the US Open, there was an extreme heat policy for men, meaning they could take a break between the third and fourth sets. Conditions today are pretty similar. Temperatures in the mid-30s with very high humidity. So it's going to be a real challenge for both players inside the Arthur Ashe Arena. And Fernando Verdasco is an opponent that Andy Murray has a great deal of respect for.
Fernando has an extremely heavy forehand, plays with a lot of spin. On the serve, kind of difficult sometimes to know what he's going to do. I played him sometimes where he's like been going for huge serves, and then also played him when he served like 80% first serve and just kind of rolled the serve in. But yeah, Fernando's a great shot maker and someone that when he's on his game, really tough to beat when he's dictating as well. You can't allow him to dictate too much.
Well, the players are due on court in the famous Arthur Ashe Arena behind me very shortly, and we'll bring you an update on Andy Murray's progress in the late edition of Reporting Scotland this evening. Caroline Itzan, Reporting Scotland at the US Open Tennis in New York.
Well, that's your news and sport. Now time for the weather with Christopher. Another dry day tomorrow?
Looks that way, Sally. Thank you very much indeed. Hello there, good evening to you. It was a bright and breezy day for many of us today. Some sunshine and blue sky. Lovely photos there from our weather watchers. There were a few showers around and still a few to come tonight, mainly through parts of Argyll and the Highlands and Islands. Elsewhere, dry with long clear spells, a cool night. Temperatures in towns and cities dipping to around 6 to 8 Celsius, but in the countryside, a few rural parts down to a chilly 3, perhaps even a touch of ground frost. So to tomorrow, and high pressure with us slap bang over the UK, keeping things mostly dry and mostly settled. Winds certainly lighter than today for most of the country, although still a brisk westerly in the far north and Northern Isles through the morning. As we go through the day, after a bright sunny start, expect the cloud to bubble up at times, and that cloud will produce the odd light shower, but I think you'll be unlucky really if you catch one. For most of us, tomorrow will be another dry day. And whilst the temperatures will be somewhat similar on the thermometer compared with today, with lighter winds, it should feel just a little bit warmer. So the chance of a shower, but if you do catch one, it should be fairly light. Now, the rest of the afternoon into the evening and overnight, little in the way of change, still a few showers around, another cool and chilly one. Then, looking ahead towards Friday, that high pressure just about holding on, but it exits stage right and a weather front moves in, and that'll bring some cloud and rain later in the day. But for most of Friday, for most of the country, Another dry one. A sunny morning, but again expect the cloud to build through the course of the afternoon. With winds coming in from the southwest though, temperatures on the rise, up to around 19 degrees, then that cloud and rain arriving later in the day. To the weekend, mostly cloudy both Saturday and Sunday, and where that cloud is thick enough, the odd spot of light rain or drizzle. Here's the pressure sequence through Saturday and Sunday. High pressure nearby, this weather front not really affecting us at all, so areas of clouds, some brightness and occasional light spots of rain or drizzle. That's the forecast for now.
Christopher, thank you very much. Now, a reminder of tonight's main news stories. More than a fifth of 14-year-old girls are self-harming, according to a charity which has been looking at the well-being of children in the UK. Young people who self-harm use a variety of methods to intentionally and repeatedly cause pain. The figures come from a Children's Society survey carried out during 2015. More than 11,000 children answered a questionnaire asking if they had deliberately hurt themselves. There's an appeal for calm and fresh negotiations after UK and French boats clashed in the English Channel over fishing rights. Scottish boats were involved in the skirmishes off the coast of Normandy yesterday morning. Talks between fishing industry leaders from both sides of the Channel are planned in Paris tomorrow. And a decision on whether Scotland will play their home matches at Hampden or Murrayfield from 2020 has been delayed. The 7-strong Scottish FA board met for several hours on Wednesday but were unable to come to a conclusion. Both parties have been asked to provide more information within the next week. And that's all from us on Reporting Scotland for now. I'll be back with the late bulletin and an update on the Murray match just after the 10 o'clock news. Until then, from everyone on the team right around the country, have a very good evening. Bye-bye.